So it looks like over half of you are already meeting with other CHW networks in your region, which is great. And we do have sort of a variety of places folks are coming from, some from sort of the more New England and Northeast states, folks really from all of their country, in the South, in the Midwest. This is great. Okay. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. That's really helpful to us. And with that, I'm very excited to get to pass the mic over to Durrell and Gail for their presentation on the New England CHW Coalition. So Durrell and Gail, please feel free to take it away.
Uh-oh, after that intro, I said in the chat, I hope we're going to do all right, guys. How are y'all feeling today? Let me see if I can pull the slides up. And then I'm going to go to slideshow. All right, thumbs up if people can see the slides. They look familiar. Yes, I keep using the NACHWA slides for any NACHWA related talk. So I want to welcome everybody first. And today, myself and Gail are going to talk to you a little about the journey of the New England CHW Coalition, because we thought that was important. But that's going to kick off a conversation that Gail's going to get deeper into about some of the work that's happening currently to develop a shared regional CHW identity with representatives from across all 6 New England states. See? So, yeah, I couldn't squeeze these pictures in right. Somebody can help me resize pictures better the next time. But Gail, I'd like for you to take a moment to please introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hey, so I'm Gail Hirsch, and I work at the part-time at the Office of Community Health Workers at the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. I retired as the director of the office there a little while ago, and I'm also a founding board member of NACHWA and also of MACHWA in Massachusetts, and I'm not quite that vertical usually.
Thank you, Gail. So my name is Durrell Fox. I'm a community health worker with over 30 years of experience. For the last 6 years, I've been working for JSI Research and Training. 3 of those years, currently, I've been working in the Atlanta office, but the 3 previous years, I was working in the Providence and Boston offices. I currently serve as a leadership member for one of those CDC 2110 grantees, one of the National Evaluation Centers, the Washington State Evaluation Project Partnership. I also serve on the Community Health Worker Core Consensus, or C3 project team, and I've served as a founding member of the CHW section of the American Public Health Association, the Mass Association of Community Health Workers, which I started working 30 years ago with Gail on certain things, the New England CHW Coalition, also served as one of the founding board members of NACHWA, as well as serving as a co-chair for the policy committee. And I'm happy to be here with you today. I just want to echo a lot of the words that Denise said so eloquently about our movement and about our need to connect and synergize across states, across regions, and across the country. And so we're going to give you a snapshot of some of our work in Region 1. I wanted to tell people about my experience, 50 plus years living in New England. If people are wondering, how is this guy from Region 4, Atlanta, talking about Region 1? But I actually am working with regional networks in actually both regions, because Region 1 has, Region 4 has started with the Southeast CHW network. So, I mean, there's origin stories and then there's origin stories. So in a moment, I think we don't have to take time doing welcome and intros because you guys already put your information in the chat, but I'll start with giving you some history. I'm talking about a rich history, multiple decades, organic relationships across New England. And New England is kind of nestled in the corner of the upper corner of the country in the Northeast. So we had a unique situation. We're a smaller region. And so I'll talk about how that maybe helped us come together, build those relationships and partnerships, and do this work seamlessly across the region. I'll talk about briefly about a project that was from 2004 to 2017 that was supported by the Office of Minority Health. And it was really supporting some of our efforts to kind of develop a CHW regional identity. So we'll talk about that. Then I'll shift it over to Gail, who will give you some information about some of the current efforts around some support from CDC, $1815, which has helped to kind of support and solidify some of our regional CHW efforts. And then we'll both spend a little time talking about some lessons learned and key considerations, because we know that's part of the reason why we have these conversations on these calls. So we're going to skip this slide, but if we didn't, I'd be asking you some of the same questions that you guys put in the chat earlier. Gail, I know you came later, but I think you saw the poll. Okay, so good, you're good to go. So let me just set the stage and tell people a story about an organic, real, true, trusting relationship building process that spanned 3 decades in New England. We had several meetings that many of us crossed states to attend. And once again, in New England, it's easy because I can be in Massachusetts, in the middle of Massachusetts, and I can get to New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine in an hour or two. I can get to Connecticut and Rhode Island in an hour or two. So that's why I said our region is kind of built for cross-state connections, synergy, collaborations, partnerships. There were several meetings. There were rural health roundtables. There was something called the NEMO, March of Dimes, and a few other organizations did a regional maternal child health meeting where community health workers and allies from different states came together. And that was for at least a couple of decades. There were also some HIV partnerships and collaborations. There's a regional asthma coalition. And so there were many other opportunities for us to come together. And most of the times we came together, even if it was about a disease or about rural health or urban health, we talked about sustainability of our workforce. That was one of the key conversations that happened at all of those gatherings. Then I want to shift to 1991 to 2011. We had the blessing to have a regional HHS office, as well as several state health departments who helped us to support for over 10 years a regional health conference. And it was organized by the New England Regional Minority Health Committee, which was a group, once again, organically organized, maybe 50 or 60 of us, representation from the workforce, from clinicians, from state health departments. And then, honestly, we had some really hardworking HHS Region 1 staffers from some of the different agencies who, like, rolled their sleeves up, were in monthly meetings, and they didn't just give us funding support, but they also gave us some other kinds of support. So we hosted a meeting every 2 years. So we started in Rhode Island, so shout out to Sarah who's on here, in 1999, and then shifted to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine. So we moved the meeting around purposely to try to reach and tap into the people who were in that state. So while it was a regional conference, we didn't just host it like in the middle of the region. We hosted it in each state every 2 years. So that's a key piece and maybe a valuable lesson learned or something that you might be able to do in your region. Then most regions, I think all 10 HHS regions had a had a Regional Health Equity Council, or RHEC. I don't know if people can put thumbs up or some kind of reaction, but were any of you involved in the RHECs over the years? Anybody on this call? Oh, sorry. So the RHECs were also another vehicle where many of us who were part of the New England Regional Minority Health Committee, as well as those of us who were involved in other regional endeavors, would come together to develop an RHEC that really looked at schools, I mean, the whole social determinative health gamut. So the RHEC really did focus on looking at the region holistically, focusing on wellness, enhancing health equity, access to care, services, education. Community health workers was central to the organizing of our RHEC. We were one of the first RHECs in the nation to have a CHW subcommittee. We then connected that subcommittee and the work of the RHEC to the New England CHW Coalition. We actually hosted a meeting. So we had an annual meeting of our RHEC each year. One year we tacked on a meeting where we just got in a room, rolled up our sleeves, and worked with the CHW Coalition. And it was efforts like that that really seeded some of the things you'll hear later. So I really wanted to make sure you saw that. I also want to give kudos to, the HHS Region 1 staff, whether they were at Office of Minority Health, the Office of the Assistant Secretary, HIV, Senior Services, Elder Affairs. All of those different agencies had people at one time or another connected to this regional movement and CHWs and supporting us, once again, not just in funding or in words, but actually coming and taking action. I just want to show this picture of the regions. There's a lot of movements now across several regions. I mentioned the Region 4, the Southeast CHW Network, which includes Region 4 members, but it also includes some Region 6 members like Arkansas, Louisiana. So we're broader than one region. But I wanted to show you also this graphic to show you, when you look at the other regions besides Region 2, you see the closeness of New England, which once again was a facilitator of our actions. Now that we've moved to a virtual world, I don't think the geography should dampen your efforts to pull together across the region. And I know some regions have already started, so I won't belabor that point. So now I want to talk about one of our milestone events, and that was a community health worker regional summit that occurred in 2012. It was once again built on all of those kind of organic and truly CHW-led movements in most cases, with some of our long-standing allies in the region. We had local, state, and regional representation from administrators, policymakers. We had national policymakers as well involved with us, but it really was grassrootsy, organic, with a lot of folks who were on the ground doing the work, who came together. The regional summit in 2012 was organized by someone who I know and love well, my wife, Lisa Renee Hollerby Fox, who at the time was the founding ED for the Massachusetts Association of Community Health Workers. And with a lot of support from our HHS Region 1 staff, some of the leadership at that time were Christy Hager and Rear Admiral Mike Milner, but there was a host of support from our HHS regional folks. And I urge, and HHS in Region 4 has been instrumental in supporting the Region 4 effort. So I'm hoping that some conversations that are going on with other regions already with NACHWA and other CHW leaders will help maybe some of the other regions who have not made that connection in the region. The summit was good in the sense that all of you all know that things are happening in each of our states where we're not all connected, right? There's grants that come in, there's efforts going on in the western part of the state or the southern part of the state that's not connected to the north. So what this summit did was ask folks to do collaborative presentations. So for each state, we pretty much had a CHW, and Gail, chime in if I miss anything. A CHW and an ally, a partner, maybe a state health department that co-presented together about efforts in the state. And that actually brought some people together who weren't working together. So once again, another strategy was to ask presenters to co-present, ensure that there's a CHW as part of that co-presentation team, but also maybe pull together someone who might be like in the southern or northern or another region of the state who has not been engaged potentially. We got participation and support from multiple partners in each state. So we even had funders, payers as well. We had an interactive forum, which was an opportunity for us to have more conversations about regional organizing. And by the end of the summit, we basically created the coalition. You know, we left that meeting, we said, we're not just gonna talk about it, we're gonna be about it. So we didn't just come together and meet for the sake of meeting. We actually developed the template for what would become our coalition, which has been around now for 10 years. So now I want to shift to the coalition. I'm just going to say, for the sake of time, and take a look, I just want to say that we wanted to just share some features of it. There's a lot more that either I or Gail can say, but basically we had regular meetings. And at first, MACHWA, our statewide association, who actually volunteered to host the summit, were the ones that were the host of our original maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe even 3 years of calls. Then that shifted to the HHS Regional 1 office. So all of our conference calls, our notes, hosting the list, all of that really has continued to be supported for the last 5 or more years by our OAS office in Region 1. To this date, we've never received any specific funding for the coalition. While we have received funding for meetings and other endeavors, members volunteer, we alternate facilitation roles and take notes. Other regions might go for funding right away. We opted not to, and we've just started some conversations about having some more foundational support for our work and by getting some funding. We shared valuable lessons learned and CHW workforce development, training, and other strategies across the region. We actually shared resources. CHWs from one state would actually be able to go to meetings or trainings in the other state. So it really was, the regional coalition was that place that helped us pull some of that together. We had a lot of conversations about policy discussions and development. If there was a Medicaid waiver in one state, we would share the language. If certification was happening in one state, we'd share the language. We'd share some of the processes so that not one of our New England states had to start, maybe Massachusetts because we were first out the gate, but none of the other states had to start from scratch, in all honesty. And all 6 states have participated actively over the 10 years. And I just want to make a note, we feel strongly that the regional coalition helped support people who had for years been having conversation and trying to build statewide CHW associations in other states in the region. So we started literally with one statewide CHW association when we had our first meeting. And by the 3rd year, we had 2. And now I think last year was our newest, remember New Hampshire to build a statewide association. We now have 4 in the region. So once again, just another tip, another pointer that people who might be waiting to start doing a lot of state development of a state association, you might want to put some effort into doing some regional work, and that potentially could help support and be foundational for some of the state-based work. I think I'm doing good for time, Gail. So then we said, okay, can we focus some energy on building a statewide CHW identity? We all had definitions of CHWs. They were all very similar. They were all aligned with the national definition from APHA, but they were absolutely different. We also had different ways of engaging key stakeholders. And so we felt it would be important to build a regional identity that wouldn't be in lieu of, but would support our state CHW identities. And so to that end, we decided to create, and we got some funding and maybe 25 or 30K from the Office of Minority Health, and through our OASH partners and others, we developed a New England CHW Professional Identity Messaging Meeting Series. Please forgive one of the typos there. And so what that did was that now offered a platform where you would come together and focus solely on building a regional identity. It was a partnership between the Region 1 RHEC, New England RHEC, and the coalition, and strong partnership and support from our HHS. One of our things that we anticipated was that this CHW professional identity and messaging would really help build the visibility and the credibility of our workforce within health, public health, social service, and insurance sectors. We really felt that by doing this together, it would strengthen our case and also our visibility across sectors that we really wanted to reach, connect with, and get support from. We had a series of webinars that we talked about topics like the National CHW Core Consensus Project, which we highlighted the community health worker core roles, skills, all of our competencies, and so our scope of practice. We talked a little bit about, and shout out to Ashley, our current chair of the APHA CHW section. We talked about some of the work that the CHW section had done, developing the national CHW definition, leading advocacy efforts to develop a standard occupational code for CHWs at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Department of Labor. And we also developed many national policy statements through APHA, which was also another way to kind of illustrate something that we might be able to do as a region. Each state also had the opportunity to present on the movement in their states. So similar to the summit, we had every state talked about some of the stuff going on with the health department. If they were starting, creating, or had a CHW association, they were able to talk about some of the work they've been doing with policymakers as well. So it really was a way for each state to kind of give a snapshot of what was happening. And then we took all of that information from the webinars and hosted an in-person multi-day meeting at the HHS regional office in Boston, where we developed some key findings. There was a report developed from that wasn't disseminated. It was one of the better reports that we saw a draft, but then it never got clearance to be. So I can't probably share that, but I don't know if Gail wants to say anything about that, but that's that. So what I want to do now is transition over to Gail. Gail, is there anything you want to add to what I've said? And then I'll bring your slides up to start with the current efforts.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thanks, Durrell. So, so what I'm going to sort of focus on is what we're doing now, what's going on in New England over the last few years. Durrell continues to participate in the New England CHW Coalition calls, as does Lisa Renee, and I really we all appreciate the support and the cross fertilization from Region 1 to Region 4. But what I'm going to focus on is specifically the support that that a subset of the coalition has received now from CDC to move forward with building a regional identity. And I'm saying this because of two things. First of all, a number of you in states are connected to your chronic disease grants, to your 1815 grants. And so the point of this is to illustrate that CDC is very interested in supporting regional organizing of CHWs. And I'll tell you a little bit about how they've helped us in New England. The New England CHW Coalition meets every other month, as Durrell said. And then, with CDC's chronic disease funding 1305 and 1422, which stretched from 2013 to 2017, CDC identified CHWs as clinical community linkages. And when the New England Coalition met, we always touched base, the New England states, on what we were doing around supporting CHWs as clinical community linkages. Now, when 1815 came out, when CDC issued its current round of chronic disease grants, which goes from 2018 to 2023, CDC actually specifically funds states to build state sustainable financing infrastructure. And that's why there are asterisks next to that particular thing, because it's really the first time that states have received such broad support from a federal agency to support sustainable infrastructure within the state. And so 5 of the 6 New England states chose those strategies to work on, CHW strategies to work on. And Durrell and I see a colleague, Sarah Lawrence here from Rhode Island, who's been working on this as well. What happened in 2019 was that CDC actually convened all the 1815 grantees, and with a focus on CHW strategies. And they gave us opportunities for state networking and for various states to make different presentations. I presented at that about what we've been doing in Massachusetts, and then I was approached by other folks from New England, from Vermont, from other states to learn more about this. And at that point, I asked CDC to how they would feel about supporting regional organizing in a more focused way. And they were very supportive. Again, this is the chronic disease unit of CDC, and they provided me with emails for all the 1815 contacts throughout New England, and I proceeded to reach out to them all, and we established a subgroup of the New England CHW Coalition, that is the state grantees that are focused on building sustainable infrastructure in the state. You can advance to the next slide, Durrell. So, so that subset of the New England Coalition meets the alternate months from the bigger coalition. We started meeting in 2019, and what we did the first year was to actually, we actually kind of had this idea, which we've been having for a while, like, wouldn't it be great if we all worked on the same kind of activity across the region, so we could actually really sort of learn from each other and advance sort of in each of our own states together. And so we wrote our CDC state work plans with that in mind, and for year 3 of the grant, which ended in June of this year, we decided to put together a professional identity template. And that is, so 3 of the New England states actually worked on this specifically, and it was Connecticut, Vermont, and Massachusetts. And so I know the writing is extremely teeny in this. Here's just there's going to be a little bit more detail on the next slide. It's a 2-page framework for identifying professional identity in each of the states. You can see at the top, it says New England CHW Coalition. It's got a map of New England. It's got profile Massachusetts. Well, there's one that says profile Vermont, and there's one that says profile Connecticut. And the other states are working on those because we share this all in the broader New England CHW Coalition. So what you can see at the top there is sort of a unifying statement about who CHWs are. And this is a very broad audience that's the target of this. This is for CHWs, it's for everyone in the state, it's for people in other states to look at. Before you flip it, Durrell, can you just go back for a minute? Thanks. So this, on the back page of this are national resources like NACHWA and CDC and all of that. But what you can see down below is community health workers and it's a state name. It's really tiny, but that's where Massachusetts goes. Okay, now you can flip to the next page. That was just a screenshot of the template.
Yeah.
And
my trigger finger was on the trigger, so yeah. I did that back.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You can go ahead. So basically, collectively in New England, we identified these 9 markers for what should be in a professional identity template. And I have to acknowledge more than anything the importance of the support from HHS Region 1 OASH Office of Minority Health Staff in helping us to compile this. So basically, these 1-pagers for each state touch on these 9 topics, and you can see what they are. I don't need to read them. We worked on this this took a while to kind of work out and really identify what was important, what wasn't important, what to call it, so that states could compare to each other, and together as a region, we could have 6 of these sheets that we basically can say, here's what's going on in New England with regarding CHW professional identity. And I'll say that we see this as a key step towards sustainability for the profession, both in the region and nationally. I think we really hope that these kind of documents will be able to be housed at NACHWA and be available to other regions to work with in their own way. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So just where we're at right now, we're in year 4 of the 1815 grants. They started in the summer, and what we decided to do together, again, working on our year 4 work plans together, was to look at sustainability state by state. And instead of our bi-monthly calls, what we're doing is hosting bi-monthly think tanks, as it were, featuring the 6 New England states. So in August, Rhode Island was featured, which is probably the state in New England that's most advanced with regard to CHW financing. In October, Massachusetts talked about our efforts towards sustainability. Next month, Maine is going, and then so on and so forth throughout the year. And this is an opportunity, again, for the state associations and the state health departments to share strategies. And I'll just, again, say that HHS Region 1 Office of Minority Health and CDC attend these meetings and are supportive of these meetings. And I expect that because we're grantees of CDC, we're going to have to start writing planning our year 5 activities and submit them to CDC, and that planning will begin soon. Some of the topics that have come up, for example, as Durrell kind of mentioned before, reciprocity. number of these states now have certification. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts all have certification. People live in one state and work in the other state. What is reciprocity of certification going to look like? That might be one topic that we decide to focus on for year 5. So moving on, Durrell and I tried to put together some sort of key considerations with regards to regional organizing that CHW networks and associations can think about. And Durrell, please jump in with me here as we move through these. But basically, as we've seen in Massachusetts, networks and associations need to reach out to other ones in their region, and some of you have regions that are very challenging, and I understand that. For us, as Durrell said, it's been relatively easy. It's been easy. And you may have in some of the bigger regions, just too many states, and it may be all too far, and you may not feel a regional identity, but reach out to another state that you do pair with well. Let's see. Yeah,
Gail, I want to build on something because I saw Ashley, and I think I was telling some people some of the history, but I spent time in Texas every year for a few years with work when they were doing the statewide meetings. The head cats and the AHACs used to do meetings in Texas, and they have all these regional organizing was happening. And I think, Ashley, you might have mentioned there was approximately 12. And so it's interesting that some states, particularly the bigger states, may decide to do some regional within a state organizing. And then I think in 2019, they created the TAP CHW for the statewide. Even in Massachusetts, we had 3 different, we had a Southeast by the Cape and Islands group. We had a group that was in Western Mass, and we're not a big state, but we organized a state association that would really support and also recognize and respect those regional nuances. So even though we had a statewide association, we still gave homage to some of the smaller regional. Yes, thank you, Gail.
No, sure. I think you added that next. I don't know who added which bullets here.
Yeah, I always, so we got about 46 or more CHW associations, networks, coalitions, alliances. Not all states have them. Not all states have all of the CHW workforce engaged, even when they have a statewide network, association, alliance. And so I just always want to remind people that the main route should be through networks and associations in states where they exist. But there's other CHW workforce members, and there may be strategies to reach them and maybe connect them if there is a statewide association. Maybe there's reasons why they're not, we won't go into all the politics behind that, but to also ensure that we continue to engage at-large members of the CHW workforce, and particularly in states that do not have a network. For instance, I know in the Southeast Regional Network, there are CHWs from states who are participating from states that don't have networks, but I would imagine a year or more, or a little bit more from now, some of that movement will move forth in their states. Thank you, Gail.
Yeah, no, so these are pretty straightforward things to be considering. I would just emphasize the importance of connecting with your state health department. There may be support there for this work, and also with your CDC project officer, should you be having CDC funding for any of your activities. And CDC definitely directly through, at least through 1815, funds state CHW associations. Definitely reach out to your HHS Region 1 folks for support. Consider convening either virtually or in person a regional coalition or a regional meeting that can give birth to a regional coalition. Massachusetts has hosted a CHW conference every year for a number of years, at least until the pandemic. And we would always have folks coming from across the region to that conference. And that helps strengthen the regional identity. And then lastly, reach out to NACHWA for support and resources. And that's something that Aurora and Denise certainly talked about, and something that NACHWA certainly hopes to continue to be able to do, to sort of build on the things we've talked about here today, and So don't be shy about getting support to do this, because it's I mean, I've watched it here in New England, and watched it's particularly how Lisa Renee, back in the beginning of all of this, would just, she would just say, hey, this is important and we need to do it. So give us a little money and we can run with it. So I just wanted to add that. And I think that's it. Durrell, anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, the item listed on your screen, identify shared interests and strategies. All of our conversations, we built common interests. We knew the needs of the different states, and we shaped our agenda based upon addressing those needs, particularly when they were shared across states. And that was a critical piece, where people weren't coming to a regional coalition and doing extra work, and they were doing work that was directly needed and impacting the work on the ground. And we just, once again, the organic nature and the CHW leadership, I just want to echo that things are moving fast. There are billions, I was going to say multi-millions, billions of dollars on the street that will be evaporating soon. Let's not go there. But we need to leverage this opportunity. In my 3 decades, I've seen ebbs and flows. When the ACA was passed in 2010, people were like, this is going to change the world for CHWs. It did for a few minutes, but then the investments dried out, the interest dried out. So we're in a ebb right now. It's for the next 3 years. Notch was here now. We did not have a national association through some of those other movements. We have one now. We didn't have a lot of regional movements back then. We have that now. So I think this is our opportunity to truly sustain across regions, across states, our CHW workforce, and support each other as well. And once again, no one has to reinvent the wheel. There are enough resources out there through Notch was plugged into the associations and networks. So please ask the question, please send that email, because it may be very helpful. And I thank you all for your time and efforts today. Thank you so much.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so very much. Durrell, Gail, you did not disappoint. I'd love it if we could stop sharing. I know that we're at the hour. I'm here to stay for a few minutes if folks have questions. If you have to leave right at 5 o'clock, if you could just take a moment, we put some questions in the chat. Let me just clarify, this is not an intention to eliminate or diminish the local or county level networks or coalitions that are already coming together. We hope to see those organizations, whether they're formal nonprofits or in whatever form they are, being able to come together to the table again across geographies to discuss and mobilize around the issues, the policies that are happening in your state, and then across the region. So we think this is a wonderful opportunity for folks to learn from one another and really band together and create sustainability. Does anyone have questions? If so, you can just come off mute. We put some questions in the chat, so if you've got to run, you can respond to the